Hi, welcome to Car and Mechanical. In this video series I'm going to show you everything involved to replace the gearbox on a Honda Fit or Honda Jazz, depending on how it's known in your country. So in this first part we're going to go through taking off the airbox, the battery tray, the slave cylinder, and we'll also take off the under tray and we'll be putting an engine support in place. So we're going to start with the battery, and whilst I'm undoing the 10 mils that hold everything in place, we'll just explain the series a little bit. So this video is going to be in 6 different parts. The raw footage for it was quite a number of hours, so what I've done in order to make things a bit more condensed and a bit more understandable is a number of bits have been sped up, sometimes up to 20 times, so the footage can appear quite rushed. But what I'm trying to cover off here is how I got access to everything, the kind of things you'll be looking for, the kind of sort of areas you're going to be trying to get tools into and everything. So we're just taking the battery and battery support tray out, so once that's removed there's a couple of bolts underneath and we're going to undo those as well. Also, another note about the series is there were some quite big gaps between filming for getting some of the bits done, and some of this came down to things like not having the right amount of tools. Like I had to order quite a huge amount of socket extensions to get to certain bits, some wobble joints, getting the gearbox itself, the engine crane which we're going to see in this, the engine support even. So some of it is being chopped around and bits of work have been done around inside each other, so sometimes the footage doesn't quite make sense, but hopefully the explanation will help there. So the next thing we're going to do with the battery support tray out is we're going to take off the airbox, we're going to take off the feed to it. Now these little clips that you can see on the end there as well, we're going to be taking a bunch of those off. It's worth buying a set of 100 off eBay for a couple of pounds. And then to get the airbox off, we're going to take off the vacuum line attachment. Now just underneath there, you can't really see it, but if you're in the engine bay, you very can easily see it. There's a hose clamp that you can undo with a 7 or 8 mil socket and a bit of an extension. So once that's undone, the airbox should just come out. Now mine was very tight, it'd been in for quite a number of years. It needed quite a bit of wobbling. Now you don't need to do what I do next. I decided to take the top of the airbox off to try and give me some more access. I think that was so I could remove the vacuum fitting or some thinking around that, but just a bit more shaking and it came off. So with that off, we're now going to drain the radiator. So the drain cap or the drain plug is just down below here, so I'm going to swing in with the camera. It's a bit hard to see, especially as we get into the sort of dark, the footage becomes a little bit grainy. I just want to show you the route to where you're looking. So it's that little plastic plug there. Should undo by hand. Mine was quite tight, it needed a bit of extra help to be undone, but once it is loose it will just unscrew. And we've got this nice little collector underneath. I use this for all my oil and coolant changes. It comes in quite handy. You can lay it flat, you're not dealing with sink pans or anything like that. So we're going to do these hose clamps, and then we're going to take off the 2 coolant lines. So they're quite stiff, they've been on for a number of years. I'll come back to that one in a minute. And then this constant tension spring clamp just fell to bits. I really don't like spring clamps, they're just absolute pain to work with. I do get the function of them, but I always tend to replace them with hose clamps, even though they're not quite as tight and they can fail a bit more. I just find spring clamps a pain to work with. Anyway, first one off, we're going to take that off and tuck it to one side. Then the other one was quite stiff, so that can need quite a bit of tugging. You could get a screwdriver under there to loosen it a bit, but they will come off. So now we've got that out of the way, we're going to start disconnecting some different bits and pieces. So there's some connectors on the gearbox, so there's some sensors, there's some different lines and bits that we need to get undone. So one of those lines we're going to get out of the way is the slave cylinder, so that line going across is going to get in the way of everything. So you're going to undo the slave cylinder, undoes nice and quickly, and we're going to swing it out of the way. Now we need to be careful because what we don't want to do is damage that line that's coming across there, and we need it out of the way for the duration of the job. So with the slave cylinder released, we're going to pull the boot off as well and swing it to one side. So the boot will just pull out. And just bear in mind when you move this, again, you don't want to bend it, and you just want to make sure it's nice and out of the way for the duration of the job, because if you do bend it, you're going to have to replace that line. It's just a piece of hassle that you could do without. And we're going to start disconnecting all the sort of little plastic pop points. So this is where some of the cables and attachments are. Now, apologies about some of the kind of rush footage, but basically different parts of line for sensors and everything, so we just want to free those up. Right, what we're going to undo next is we're going to undo the gear linkages. So these have got some split pins in, or cotter pins. You're going to unfold them and then you're going to pull them out. Now what I'm going to suggest is that you keep everything that you bag and tag it. So get yourself some food bags, get yourself some post-its and a pen, and separately bag everything, take pictures and just kind of keep a record of where everything is. because when you put it all back together you want to keep it nice and organised. Like I said, this happened over quite a long period for me whilst I was waiting for parts, so it was quite important that I had things organised. There's another split pin down here at the back, we'll get in there in a second to get a better look. Now these split pins, they did get replaced when everything got put back together, but it's sort of quite important that you just keep them so you can sort of keep a reference for what to replace. Even if they kind of fall to bits, you just know what sort of size you needed, and they're going to get bagged and put away. So the washers come off as well, we'll put them into the same place. Right, so next up I'm going to introduce you to the engine support, and then we're going to get the bits in place so we can sort that out. So the engine support I got basically because we'll be taking the gearbox off, and gearbox mounts and things will come off, so the engine will be only supported on one side. The engine support doesn't fit as you would expect because it needs to go over the struts, and because of the way the Honda Jazz is, the engine's quite far forward. So what ends up happening is a friend fabricates me some bits and pieces, but what I need to do is I need to take off some trim, so the car needs to be jacked up. Whilst we've got it jacked up, we'll take off the under tray in a minute, make sure it's nice and well supported. And then we'll take off the trim and we'll take off the under tray, which means that we're fairly clear that we can then put the engine support in place. So in no particular order, we're going to take off that trim piece there, we're going to take off the covers for the wiper arms. I believe they're 13mm, so we're going to take off the nuts for those too. So we'll do that for each side, and then you want to pull the wiper arms off. Now, in an ideal world, you give them a bit of a shake, give them a bit of a pull and they come up. Also fold back this trim. However, it's not always an ideal world, and wiper arms can be quite stuck, so I'm going to use a puller here. I've taken wiper arms off before, sometimes they come straight off, sometimes they need a bit of a shake, but sometimes they're quite stubborn. Also, whilst we lead up to that, I'm just going to undo these little plastic pop rivets. This is another thing, it's worth getting off eBay. You can get a bag of 100 pieces for a couple of pounds. You can get them from eBay or Amazon from the UK, but I just tend to find they're the same thing, but you pay 3, 4 or 5 times as much for them. So what we'll do is this piece of trim lifts out. We want to take off the line to the washer. We have to do it on the other side as well. So on the other side, I'm just going to show when we took off the wiper arms. So you're using a puller. So these pullers could be sort of 10 to 15 pounds. You want to get a semi-decent one so it doesn't bend. You just line it up over the bolt itself, and you get it as centre as possible. You can't always get it perfect, but you'll then wind it in. As you wind it, it will lift the wiper arm out, and it just makes the job quite a bit easier. So I ended up doing that for the other side. In fact, this one it didn't quite want to come off, so I just wanted to show it pulling it all of the way off. And you can see why there's quite a bit of crud underneath. And with this mess you are seeing in the engine bay initially, we are going to come back and clean that up. So then, as I grabbed the wiper arm itself, the wiper started to come off, so I just pulled it out so we could put it back on after. We can then remove that last piece of trim, so we're going to remove the wiper arm, which is now loose. We'll get that out of the way so it's not scratching the bonnet. We need to get the trim out of the way that's lifted above the bonnet, you see around the back. Then we can take this piece of trim off, and then there's the last washer line from underneath. And we can then go and put that trim in a box where it's going to sit for a good couple of weeks until we get all the other parts to put it back together, and we reveal more mess underneath. So with that, now we've got the clear space to get the engine support in, but we need to get the under tray out from underneath. The under tray is held in with pop rivets, so these are either side of the wheel arches. So you have to excuse the sort of action camness that's going on here. Basically, I'm holding the camera in one hand and doing everything else in the other. We've got pop rivets underneath, so that one's right towards the back of the engine bay area, sort of more towards the driver's footwell. So we'll do these either side, so you can unpop them with a screwdriver, and then you can get a trim tool behind or a screwdriver to pop them out. Again, I mentioned to buy a bag off eBay, 100, 200 for a couple of pounds. Now, when you get all these done, you'd expect the tray to pull out, but there's 2 more at the front bumper. We'll get that last one out as well. And you'll see I tried to pull it out initially, but it's stuck. So we've got these 2 more rivets we need to undo. Pop those out, and we can pull the tray out of the way. So we're now in a position where we can put the engine support into place. So what happens with the engine support is a friend fabricated some parts for me out of some box section and some old drive shafts. We're going to show that to you in a second in its completed form, and I'll take you through how I put this into place. So basically the box section extensions that my friend has made on some drive shafts to go on either side and fit over these strut towers. And then the actual mount itself fits over sort of the centre of the engine. There's a couple of nuts either side that have been welded on, and then we're going to put the bolts into place which hold the engine support in. There's a little crane piece which goes in the middle, so it's like quite a big bolt, threaded bolt. There's a chain which will hang the engine off of, and we'll use the engine support to keep it nice and sturdy. So with the gearbox coming off and it being held down by only one mount on one side, I preferred this route. I could have supported the engine from underneath, but because I was going to be under the car so much, undoing bits like the subframe and the gearbox itself, I preferred this option of having the engine supported from on top. So it's just what I wanted to demonstrate. We can see that it is quite nice and solid there. So that is part one. We've got everything up to supporting the engine in place. In part two, we'll be taking off the intake, the throttle bodies, the starter motor and the drive shafts. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please remember to subscribe. Please leave any comments or feedback in the section down below. And again, more than anything, thank you for watching.